information about people and organizations in the Asheville area. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce you to my first guest, and he is Bray Creech, a certified financial planner with Joel Adams and Associates and the Raymond James Financial Services. And welcome aboard, Bray.
Thank you, Blaine. Good to see you, sir.
Okay, likewise. And Bray, you can also wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook land.
Oh, hi, everybody.
Okay,
Good to see you.
Okay, so everybody's watching us, Bray.
Good.
I should mention that Bray is a North Carolina native who's lived in Asheville for many years. He has an MBA in finance from the University of Maryland in College Park. He's a certified public accountant, holds the accredited investment fiduciary designation as a certified financial planner practitioner. He is a member of the Forum for Sustainable and Responsible Investment, North Carolina Association of CPAs, and the Investment Advisory Association. He is the owner of Joel Adams and Associates, which is offered through Raymond James Financial Services, and he's, I should mention, he's not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of the Raymond James Financial Services. And Bray, the question I always ask a guest the first time is, in terms of the financial planning business. As a little kid, where you grew up in, you said in
North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina.
When you were a little kid, did you always know you wanted to be a financial planner?
Not that specific. As most folks, I had, vague ideas about what I wanted to do. I think it was everything from being an actor to being an astronaut. But it did include being a business person in some way. I remember having a business desk, maybe at the age of 5, and I would have important papers on my important business desk. And I think I would force my sister and my parents to come and do business with me at my business desk.
Oh, that really is cool. Do you still have that business desk?
No, who knows where that is?
Oh, wouldn't that be great
Yeah,
if you still had it?
yeah.
Or that would be your desk. So as a little kid, you're 5 years old, wanting people to do business. But what kind of business was it? Do you remember?
Oh, I was just an important business person. That's all I think I could conceptualize at the time. That's all I remember.
Did you sell lemonade?
I never sold lemonade, no.
Okay.
We lived, this was in the late 70s, early 80s in Smithfield, North Carolina, Johnston County. So the closest home from our house was quite a ways down the way. So there's no sidewalk traffic to sell lemonade to.
It'd be a slow day on
It's
the
a slow day, yeah.
So then you also mentioned too, and that's how I think I know you through the acting and theater world.
Yeah.
At one time, you wanted to be an actor.
Yes, I did.
And so what happened to that?
Well, I realized I'm not talented.
As an actor, yet to your credit, and that's how I think I first met you. You were on the board of Asheville Community Theater, the board of directors, right?
I was. I served 2 terms there. I was the treasurer for a while, and they have term limits, so I had to roll off. But really enjoyed that time. Probably my favorite nonprofit board experience was Asheville Community Theater. It's a great organization. I think you and I both share that feeling about it.
And they just do, great work.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned too, in nonprofits. I know you've been involved in some other nonprofits as well.
Currently, I'm on the board of Asheville Humane Society right now, and but yes, I've done other nonprofit board work. So I think it's important to give back in any way that you feel you can, based on your skills and so on, to the community. I think it's important to be involved in the community. So it's important to me. It's important to our firm to be out there.
And another great organization, Humane Society,
Yeah.
too. And what you say, Ray, reminds me of one of my favorite quotes by Shirley Chisholm. She was a New York City politician, first woman actually to run for president ever, I think in the 60s. And she said, service is the rent we pay for living on Earth.
Absolutely.
So your point is giving back, that it's more than
Absolutely.
just the work thing. You should help other people as well.
Yeah.
But it ties in, I think, to almost like a perfect job for you, because in terms of being a financial planner, a financial advisor with, I guess, it's your own firm, you're doing that, and you're helping people, I guess. And let's talk about specifically, you work with lots of folks, but you work with a lot of folks who are retired. Is that true?
That's true. Joel Adams founded our particular firm, hence the name of it, Joel Adams and Associates. I became an owner 2 years ago, Yes, our job is investment consulting and financial planning, principally with people saving for retirement and saving for college. That's sort of a typical situation. Frankly, our clients range in age from newborn to all the way up there to, I think our oldest client is in his mid-90s, I believe.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about this whole idea of planning for retirement. And I guess you get this asked often, but when's the best time to start planning for retirement?
Right now.
Setting up. Okay. I mean, the point is, it's never too late. Is that correct?
I don't think it's ever too late. Um, Save early, save often. It assumes, I think retirement will look very different for my generation, I'm 43, than for your generation. I think it's going to be a little bit different. I think people are going to retire a little bit longer, later in life. And I think it will be a process rather than an event. People will glide into it over time rather than like one day I turn 65 and I'm retired. I think that model won't be around for much longer.
Well, it's interesting, too, you say that, because I think the other thing that's changing, too, is that in my generation, the hope was that kids, and as they get older, would do better than their parents. You know, that
Right.
parents struggled or whatever, and then they would succeed, and then my daughter would do better than me.
Exactly.
It doesn't necessarily look like that's going to happen.
There's some concerns about there, and that's what we're talking about as a country politically in this election season. That's the debate, is the American dream, I guess you call it.
You know, and I, like you said, I worry that I was perhaps the example. I kind of retired on the early side from a full-time thing at the age of, I think, 59, you know. But I don't see a lot of other people necessarily being able to do that. Or I think I'm seeing people working longer, as you point out.
You know, there's different motivations for that. Some of it may just be financial, that they need to work longer. And what we're finding, though, with some professional class folks, doctors, lawyers, architects, go down the list, people who work with their brains and sit at a desk all day, is that they like to keep working because they enjoy what they do. So for some of our clients, it's hard to get them to retire as they approach late 60s, early 70s. They like to go to the office. They like to be doing things, continue to learn things, and they get that through their job. So I think there's different motivations why people are continuing to work.
And it's interesting, too, because it reminds me of one of my favorite books. It's a book called Rewire, Don't Retire. You know,
Yeah.
so that's sort of what I've tried to do in my life, is not necessarily retire,
Right.
but just go into different things, you know, as opposed to doing the same old, same old.
Right.
And I think you're probably seeing a lot of that also.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that here in Asheville, for example, we have the OLLI program at UNC Asheville, where people can stay engaged, continue to learn from other folks and be with other older folks. It's funny, I really believe that our retired clients are more busy than our working clients.
Well, it's so funny you say that, too, because that's what my wife says. You know,
Uh-huh.
she says, I'm busier now than when I work full time, you know. But let's talk, though, about people, as you said, never too late to start or never too early to start. The sooner you start this, the better.
Yeah.
And so make me familiar about something I've read about through you called the Secure Act. And that's something I should be aware of?
I think so. It's a big piece of federal legislation that was signed by the president in December. It was in Congress last year, passed the House in the spring, and went to the Senate. Senate moved it around a little bit, but anyway, it passed. It was a bipartisan, as I understand it, piece of legislation called the Secure Act, which is good in this day and age to have something that's
Exactly.
both teams support. The goal was to improve retirement planning in the United States. That sort of was the goal, with a million different details after that. But the objective was to improve how people can save for retirement in the United States.
And has it achieved the goal, or is it in the process of achieving it?
Well, it just passed, and so we're in February. It's going to take a while for it to cook out and see how it shakes out. I hope so. I think everyone hopes so. The retirement planning system in America, in my opinion, is a little bit of a disaster. And I think most people agree with that, and that's why this legislation, I think one of the biggest changes to retirement planning in over a decade as far as federal legislation goes. It was an acknowledgement that the system needs improvements.
You know, part of the problem, Bray, as I see it, is that you never taught this in school. You know, in terms of, think about high school and college, whatnot. You take lots of courses. You take history courses. You know, they always kind of not bug me, but you take 17 history courses. You know, you
Right.
take all these other courses, but unfortunately, you never take course in, very few people take course in financial literacy. You know, and it's been talked about, but it's still kind of out there. And you never take course in retirement.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that's a unfortunate thing. I understand that some states require one sort of personal financial planning class in high school. I can't list those states for you right now, but that I think is great. I wish folks in college would take a personal financial planning class, maybe a requirement, because it's so essential. I mean, of course, all the other stuff is essential, but I think that is essential as well. We're in a system where folks can't count on pensions like they used to. Pension is just basically an income stream that you can't outlive once you retire. And those pensions have disappeared, except for the public sector where we still see them, and some large corporations still have some legacy pensions. But certainly my generation will not see pensions. So that means the burden is on you you meaning to save for retirement and invest correctly.
And I think you raise a good point in terms of the burden being on you, because if you're not aware of your own finances, you know, no offense to Bray Creech and no offense to anybody, but you have to own responsibility for it.
That's right.
Because can you imagine, you're talking about pensions, that you have to be smart about it too, because, you know, can you imagine you're in a pension and it folds or some financial, the money's taken away from you, all of a sudden to be at a certain age, it's a little scary.
That has happened and is happening. You know, we're seeing that at the municipal level, at the state and local level, where some pension obligations are being reexamined to those employees because they're unaffordable. So yes, it's already been a precedent now that pension obligations can be changed while people are receiving the pension.
Can you do anything as an individual to be on top of that, or make sure it doesn't happen to you? You know, or just, I guess, spread your investments around?
Well, from a pension point of view, if you're receiving a pension or if you're subject to a pension, like here in North Carolina, I would pay attention to if you're a teacher, for example, and you're going to be receiving the North Carolina state pension, I would pay attention to the state pension plan. Who are the trustees? How is it managed? Are they doing their due diligence? And that matters as far as elections go too.
Elections do have consequences.
They absolutely do. Yeah.
Well, talk about then a little bit back to the Secure Act, that you mentioned pensions, but one of the things I was able to do through a financial person in Pennsylvania was move some of my money, or a lot of my money, out of pensions into, at the time, annuities, which worked for me in terms of guaranteed pension stream, and IRAs. You can eventually move some of your money out of what it's in.
And when it comes to retirement accounts, yes, there are rollover rules and strategies depending on your particular situation. Yeah.
And talk also about IRAs then, because the Secure Act ties into the IRA. What should people know about that?
With the Secure Act, that impacted IRAs, one big way it impacted them is that if I had an IRA and I left it to, say, one of my children, one thing I guess people should know about any sort of tax-deferred account like an IRA or a 401k is that the deal there is that when you retire and pull the money out, it is subject to federal and state income tax at the year of the withdrawal. And so that matters when I die and leave an IRA or 401k to, say, one of my children. Previously, the rules were that if I die and leave it, say, to one of my children, that my child has the rest of my child's life to take the money out of the IRA or to the 401k. and those are called required minimum distribution rules. So basically the IRS saying you got to take a little piece out of the IRA or the 401k every year. It's got to be taxed, and then you can do whatever you want with the difference. But the ability to stretch my IRA or my 401k to my child, if I leave it to my child, has now changed under the Secure Act. The Secure Act now requires the IRA or the 401k or 403b to be subject to a 10-year distribution rule now. So if I die and leave it to my child now, unless they meet certain criteria, they are required to take it out within 10 years' time instead of the rest of their life. That's a major change.
Okay, so that's in terms of 10 years. Do they have to be a certain age, or they can take it out any age?
If they are over the age of majority, which in the state of North Carolina is 18, they have to take it out within 10 years upon receipt of receiving the IRA or the 401k from someone who has passed away.
Okay, so that has tax consequences too for the child.
Has absolutely tax consequences, and that's where some planning strategies come into place. But you can take it out in any sort of way you want to over that 10-year time period, but the bottom line is it needs to come out by year 10.
Now let's talk about, so taking the money out and what you can do with it. So one option, and always has been the IRAs, right? That people can put into IRA.
Right.
What age should people, in terms of all ages of people you work with, what age should people start thinking about setting up an IRA?
Is right today.
No, and
Yeah.
seriously, it is.
Yeah.
The earlier you set it up, the better. Is that correct?
Well, if you invest it, it's the compound annual growth that is really helpful for most people. And time gives us that compound annual growth rate. And there are tax benefits. If I put in, for example, money into an IRA or to a 401k at my employer, you put in tax-deferred money, so you avoid federal and state income tax on the contribution. So there's a tax benefit present day, and then, of course, the future you will appreciate it by the savings that you have when you retire.
One of the scary things I think about what you're talking about is the fact that nobody really ever, again, shows you how to do this. In other words, I remember back when I was working full-time as a college professor, nobody ever told me about a 403b account, and what a great thing it became. But it took, like, my employer never told me about it, and I had to ask them about it.
Right.
They didn't have provisions to set it up. I had to get provisions made. But that was a shame because I lost like 10 years. I could have been deposited a 403b. And for the benefit of the folks who don't know what a 403b account, what is that?
It's an employer retirement plan. You mostly see that with colleges, universities, nonprofits. Blaine, I hear that all the time from people, that their employer offered a retirement plan, but they had some vague notion that it existed.
Right.
They didn't really understand the consequences of it participating or not participating. They made a decision that took 5 minutes, but it had a lifetime consequence.
Bray, you're so on target. That's exactly what happened. When I first began, I didn't know about any of this stuff. I was given some sheets of paper. Sign here, do this. Which option do you want? And I had no idea, and they had no idea. They had no financial literacy programs. They had no programs to even tell people where to go. And it was like maybe for 10 years I could have done better had I known about it.
There's been a lot of reform in the employer retirement plan space, certainly over the last, I'd say, 10 or 15, 20 years. Back in the old days, in air quotes, old days, employer retirement plans would offer, hundreds of funds.
Exactly.
The participants had no idea what those funds were, how they should invest. There was no notion of diversified investing to your risk tolerance. It was a disaster, I think.
Well, we had just the opposite, Bray, that we worked with, I think, initially, and I got involved in changing it. There were two options. You could do A or B.
Right.
And I said, well, what about this? What about no low mutual fund?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't on our approved list, And it took me a battle. It took me several years just to get an approved list of, I think people got 10 choices.
Yeah.
But that's something wrong with that whole process.
And that 10 choices is important because the number of funds available in an employer retirement plan actually does matter. We know that people can have choice overload if there's too many funds in there, and they sort of shut down.
And that's exactly what it was too. That some people wanted 53 funds option,
Yeah.
but then it did become overload.
We've seen now that the default option tends to be in retirement plans, what we call target date retirement funds, which are very well diversified. And the concept there is that the younger you are, the more growth potential that they have, more stock allocation. As you approach the age of retirement, they become more conservative over time behind the scenes towards more bonds and so on. It's a set it and forget it. One fund is all you need sort of approach. I think that's probably served people much better than even when I had a 401k in the mid 2000s. I remember there were 50 or 60 funds in there, and they were just random, and there was no way to know what to do. So that I think there's been some improvements in that space for sure.
As you said, I think that the key word is conservative, because I think as you get older, you want to be more conservative, or at least I tend to be more
Right, and that's
conservative.
not uncommon.
Yeah. What about this affecting also small business owners? Because again, we were talking about schools and colleges and teachers and nonprofits, but you work with, I guess, the whole gestalt of folks.
Yeah.
Small business owner, how am I going to be impacted?
Small business owners want to do right by their employees for the most part, and when they contemplate setting up an employer retirement plan for their team, they face a Byzantine alphabet soup of options, and they take on some burdens and obligations and fees that feel onerous to most small business owners, in our experience. So unfortunately, a lot of small business owners are incentivized to create a retirement plan. First of all, they're busy running the business. There are a million other emergencies in front of them, and that one seems like the least important. So what the Secure Act did was try to create some incentives, tax incentives, for small business owners to start a retirement plan. So literally, they increased the tax incentives, which are already in place. I think they just added a zero or two
Okay.
to get small business owners to start a retirement plan.
You mentioned an incentive. For example, what would it be?
A tax incentive.
Meaning that I'd pay less taxes?
Right. And you have to demonstrate that you started a retirement plan. There will be some criteria to meet to demonstrate that. But the idea is that the IRS wants to incentivize you with tax incentives to start it, to offset some of the startup costs associated, frankly, with starting a 401k.
Listening to you, it seems to me that this also is pointing the need for this massive education program, not just we were talking about in high school, college,
Yep.
but out here. And one of the ways I've also gotten to know you, and I've enjoyed reading your stuff, is every so often I'll see you do an op-ed or a column.
Right.
It's run in the paper. Do you enjoy doing that?
I do. I aim for one column a month in the
Is
Nashville
that-
Citizen Times.
Because I always say, I wish it was more often, but
Yeah.
it's really good stuff. It's very pragmatic. It's really down to earth. Oftentimes you let me run it in my blog as well.
Thank you.
And just what's fun is you choose topics that I think a lot of people need to know about.
That's the goal. They made it clear when I started it, that I couldn't opine on the economy or the capital markets, which I enjoy opining on in studying and learning about. It had to be very practical, financial planning in nature, sort of step 1, step 2, step 3 sort of a thing. So I have anxiety for about 3 days when I write it every month, because I think, oh, what am I going to write about this month? But usually it's something that's on my mind, or I think maybe on our clients' minds or on the public's mind at that time. So I've written 2 articles on the Secure Act. One popped online. The second one popped online this week. I think it'll be in Sunday's print. So I think the Secure Act has sort of taken up my last 2 articles.
Aside from me, do you get any other feedback on your articles?
I do.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Clients will respond, and folks I don't know will. 99% of them are very nice.
Well, and the 1% has something to do with you, I guess, just their situation.
Yeah.
Talk about also what changes with respect to, and it's affecting a lot of people with charity and donations to charity. You're talking before about nonprofits.
Yeah.
Is Secure Act changing that?
The Secure Act still allows for people to give out of their give to charity out of their IRA as long as you're age 70 and a half or over, which I think is fabulous because under the tax law, which changed a few years ago, most people cannot itemize their deductions anymore. The standard deduction is very high, so the ability to itemize your charitable giving is decreased. I think something like only 10% of people now can itemize.
Which, by the way, I thought nobody's asking me, but I'll tell you anyway. I thought it was a kind of a big mistake. Especially you talk about Asheville Community Theater
Yeah.
or other nonprofits. I heard they haven't taken a hit yet, but it may well happen.
I was talking with someone about this yesterday, about another local nonprofit. I've not anecdotally heard people taking a hit from the change. My sense of that may be that the tax incentive is really a secondary or even less motivation for people. People generally give to charity because they feel it's important to them, it's a value. But the qualified charitable distribution you can still take from your IRA. That means that it has to go straight from your IRA to a charity. You have to be over age 70 and a half. You're not taxed on the withdrawal. You avoid federal income tax on the withdrawal as long as it goes straight to a 501c3 or a qualified charity. And it counts towards your required minimum distribution for that year as well. It's a great way to give to charity for people who can no longer itemize.
It really is, and at least have the money in their IRAs,
Yes,
to
that's
do that.
right, yeah.
One other thing, Bray, I wanted to ask you about, and when I was reading your mini bio here too,
Yeah.
I love what you say that you're involved in sustainable investing. What does that mean?
With our clients, it means they are concerned about the environment. I like to say they want to put their money to work, but they don't want to burn the world down while they're doing it. It's concerns about treating your employees fairly, making a decent product or service, being a good steward of the environment, caring about your community. So we look for companies to lend to or to own that meet certain criteria. We now call that ESG, environmental, social responsibility, and governance is what ESG means. It's an approach to investing that many of our clients use in some manner.
And do you have not right to, but do people ask you for a list of these companies, or do you have available a list?
We have investment strategies at our firm that we use for that. Yes.
Okay. And some of them, even though it's for the good of the country, if you will, that you can also do well financially too. They're not bad investments per se.
I think old notion was that you had a performance hit if you engaged in sustainable investing, and the data is fairly clear that there's no performance hit. If you get super specific, however, you may have some differences from the broader market returns, but for the most part, we've not seen performance hits.
And you raised a good point there too. I like what you said, super specific. That I guess no investment's going to meet necessarily every criteria
That's right.
you want.
Absolutely not.
So almost, I guess, like buying a house. You'd like a perfect house, but it's not going to happen.
Perfect is the enemy of the good, and with ESG investing, sustainable investing is all about the gray area, because some company may be really good on having women in senior management or board of directors, but really bad on some environmental stuff. So you have to sort of weigh it out.
And I guess that's frustrating for you as an advisor, that you'll have somebody invest in something and then they'll read something out here.
Right.
Or I guess also, this has changed your whole business, I guess, too, that there's a lot more information than there was 10 years ago even.
And that's a good thing. I think more information is better. A more informed public, I think, is better, for sure.
Bray Creech, if anybody wants to get more information about you, aside from reading this Sunday's Citizen Times, to read your column, and I encourage people to do that, what's the best bet?
Well, thank you. On the internet, joeladamsasheville.com is where we are. They can learn more about us there.
Okay. And thank you for being my guest this first half hour on the BLAINEWSWORLD Show. A lot of good stuff. A lot of stuff that I think people just have to kind of think about. And unfortunately, I guess you have this. They don't think about it far enough in advance.
Right.
You get, I guess, some people are coming in at the age of 70, 75, 80, what am I going to do?
We've seen that, unfortunately. But thank you for giving us the time, giving me the time to get the word out.
Okay, as always, a pleasure. Bray,
thank you,
speak to you soon. And
Okay.
as you work your way out, I'll mention that support for this show and WPVM is underwritten by the Grail Movie House, Asheville's alternative cinema. The Grail Movie House is an independent, locally owned 3-screen cinema located in downtown Asheville. For current features, visit the Grail website at grailmoviehouse.com or the Grail's social media pages. As our next guests work their way into the studio, I'd like to mention a couple of upcoming theater productions that are going to be happening in the Asheville area. One is, let me see if I can get these. Yeah, one is going to be a friend of mine is running Happy Death Day, interactive comedy murder mystery, and that's going to be on Sunday, March the 22nd, and it's going to be at the Waverly Inn in Hendersonville, and it should be a real fun evening. You get to play the detective, and for information about that, you can call 828-693-9193. In addition, another friend produces, marquee comedy produces Comedy Is Not Pretty. And that's now every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. At the Asheville Beauty Academy, featuring dozens of Asheville's top comics. And in terms of top people, it's now my pleasure to introduce my second guest, actually my two second guests, and they are Marc Cameron and Alexandra McPherson, isn't it? Alexandra?
Yes,
And you're going to have to move a little bit closer to the mic. That'd be great. And before we even do the introduction, you guys can wave to all your fans and friends in the Facebook world. Okay, so everybody's watching you here. And Marc, I know as an actor and director, very talented guy. I've seen him in productions. I've seen stuff he's directed. He's moved to, I can't believe you only moved here 2 years ago? A little over 2 years
A
ago?
little bit over 2, heading towards 3 soon.
Okay, but boy, you all of a sudden got a little bit busy.
I did
those
get a little busy.
2 to 3 years. And Mark's, I'll kind of give the summary. He's lived in New York City, Washington, Miami, Denver, Seattle, Los Angeles. He obtained his SAG card on Miami Vice. He's done a whole bunch of other stuff. And rather than talk about all the past stuff, Marc, we'll talk about some of the current stuff. And that ties me into introducing Alex. Alex, I don't have your bio, but if you move, again, a little bit closer, pull the mic a little bit closer, kind of the Reader's Digest version of your background with respect to theater.
We moved here 10 years ago with my husband's job, and we brought our youngest child with us. She was in Reynolds High School and in the musical theatre program, and I was backstage mom and thought, I kind of like this. And I volunteered at ACT and was introduced to the Autumn Players. So I'd like to give a shout out to the Autumn Players for their encouragement. Readers Theatre, done some Montford. My last play I was in was with Different Strokes, so that was an awesome experience. And now Marc. Thank you, Marc.
You're welcome.
And now I got it. That's how I know you, I think, through Different Strokes or some other stuff you're in. I see you in a lot of different stuff. You know, you keep busy. Question, and I'll ask Marc this also, but when did you decide you wanted to get into theater? Like, when you were a kid? When you did?
Oh, back in high school, we did it. It was just extracurricular. We didn't have any acting classes, and I always thought, I quite fancy this. But of course, you know, it doesn't pay, and everybody tells you don't put your daughter on the stage. And so I've done it for fun. And then, like I said, when we moved here with my youngest at Reynolds, I think I'd like to have a go at that again.
What was the first play you ever did? Do you remember?
Oh, in high school?
Or anywhere, any level?
I was in The Importance of Being Earnest. I can't remember the high school ones terribly well. Montford, Gertrude in Hamlet. I've been Agamemnon. I've been Miss Prism.
Well, I asked you that for a reason, and Marc, I want you to keep this in mind. I may have told you this previously, but I still have this great idea for a fundraiser, you know, for some local theater, to have everybody do their very first show they ever did, you know, and to, you know, tape it then, because do you remember the first thing you ever did, Marc?
Well, I would have to put my tap shoes on and be Tulsa from Gypsy.
Okay, so you remember it.
I had no lines. I was just a dancer.
Okay. Now, did they have a tape of that?
Oh, I don't know. It was back in the early 70s, so who knows?
But
There may be.
But wouldn't that be cool if we all of a sudden did Gypsy again and you make an appearance and this time we tape it for the world to see, you know, your very first appearance?
I'd have to teach myself all over, but it would be fun. It would be
Okay.
fun at 63 to go back to those high school days.
Just a crazy idea. Anyway, let's kind of get past high school and talk about some of the things, Marc, you're currently involved in. That's one of the reasons I had to come on board. Specifically, you're working on simultaneously, I guess, 2 productions. And one of them I know Alex is involved in, and that's what show is coming up?
Calendar Girls, and that is out at Foothills Community Theater out in Marion. So us Ashevilleans are doing some serious driving back and forth 4 nights a week. And then one night a week, I started rehearsals for Three Tall Women, which is a collaboration with my own little small theater group called the Third Eye Productions and Henderson Community Theater. And so I do one night there, and pretty soon, once Calendar Girls opens on the 13th of March out in Marion, then I'll switch and do 4 nights a week in Hendersonville. And Three Tall Women opens April 17th.
And that's one of the things, Mark, that always amazed me, not only about you, but all people in the theater world, that they're doing a bunch of things simultaneously. And I'll ask Alex that question. Have you ever done, like, more than one show at a time? You know, working on one in rehearsals for another?
Just the one summer. I forget which production at Montfort it was, but I was also doing a Reader's Theatre, but the Reader's Theatres are during the day.
And that's I won't say an easier thing to do, but, you know, I've seen some performers, I don't know, Mark, I'll ask you if you've ever done this, will be doing 2 or 3 at a time. You know, they'll be in one play, rehearsing another, getting ready to do a third. Have you ever had to juggle 3 at a time?
Well, I'm juggling the 2 I'm in now, and I was in a mockumentary TV 5-episode production that was being produced by Ashley and Matt Winter, and that was called PT, Pain and Torture. It was a comedy, a lot like The Office, and I happen to be the owner of the physical therapy practice, and I have a bunch of crazy therapists and a bunch of crazy people, and it's kind of, I think it's going to come out in June or May or June. So I was working on 5 episodes of doing that on Saturdays for like 10 or 12-hour days and still rehearsing 5 nights a week. But that's done. So I'm now going from 3 to 2, and eventually I'll go to 1.
And you mentioned that's going to be out. What's it going to be out on?
I don't know what they're going to do with it, whether it's going to be, you know, like an internet series, whether they're going to try and push it as a pilot for more funding to do more episodes. It just was a great fun. I don't usually get cast as the funny guy and the goofy guy. And so
Well, I
it
know.
was good to be that weird and that
except
crazy.
In Red, you know, I don't know if it's comedy, but the goofy guy maybe a little bit strange.
Strange. I always get off center.
But let me know when if that's on the air.
Sure. I'll
I'd
get
love
all
to
that
see it.
information to you.
Mark, do you have a preference in terms of, you know, you've done a lot of acting in your life now, it seems you're moving more into the directing area. Do you have a preference?
I prefer to direct. Definitely. It's more satisfying because it's a big picture and a lot of little moving parts. Not always easy, but it challenges me and my skills, I think, the best. I will always act, for sure, if the right roles come up and the right opportunities come up. But directing, I'm at that point in my life where I'd rather encourage other people to learn their
I was
lines
just going to say
instead
that.
of me.
Well, you mentioned that. You know, I've told you I'm now in an upcoming play, and yeah, lines are tough. You know, for some people. I don't know, Alex. Are they tough for you, Alex?
Yes.
Yeah.
And back to your previous question, to be in more than one production at a time would actually be wishful thinking and what am I trying to say? I should be so lucky.
Well,
To
There
be
we
that
go.
busy.
To be that busy, I should be so lucky.
You know, we're talking, Alex, about, you know, being in 2 plays at once. Like, I like what you said, that should be the least of your problems. But also what amazes me about actors, when they, within a play, have to play like 4 or 5 parts. You know, I don't know, at Montfort, if you ever had to do that, or did you ever have to do multiple roles within a play?
No,
Just
I should be so lucky.
It blows me away. Scott, have you ever had to do that?
I've done it a couple of times, and it's a challenge because you really can't give each one of them your full attention. So you do the best you can, and you get as much as you can out of that character, and the next thing you know, you're flipping to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one. And it's hard to keep up with. I don't know. I haven't had that challenge as a older adult. I don't think I'd do very well with it, but certainly in my 20s and 30s, you just went with it.
It reminds me of like the people who do the tuna shows.
Oh, Greater
or,
Tuna,
yeah,
sure.
Or the Shakespeare, you know, the 23 shows of Shakespeare, and they play like 17 parts, you know. It's just amazing that people can do that.
Not something I'm interested in anymore.
What got you into directing?
I think when I studied out at the Beverly Hills Playhouse out in Los Angeles, part of our acting classes, the other 50% was you didn't just do a scene, you worked with other students and other peers, and you directed their scenes. So I learned as much about acting and directing at the same time out there, and it was kind of a surprise because I didn't have that exposure earlier on anywhere else I had studied. So it was kind of interesting to leave Los Angeles and go, oh, I guess I could be a fairly decent theater director, because they worked very hard at did you cast this right? Did you get the right moments? Did you get the right beats? Was this, over the top? They really, really were very detailed oriented, and I think I'm a fairly detailed oriented director.
So how do you get out then to Marion to direct The Calendar Girls?
Well, a friend of mine that I was involved in on another project, Connie Hurst, was saying that they were doing Calendar Girls, and she was like, they probably could use some directors out there because, people come and go. It's a lot of work, and, when you've got a small budget, which we have, you've got to be creative and make it stretch. So I just applied, and they called me, and when I agreed that I would come out there in the winter over the mountain and just deal with whatever happens, we've already had 2 snow days. It was a great opportunity, and plus it's kind of hard to get into some of the directing here. Some of the programs here are pretty set with the people they have, and I thought, well, I'll just go out to Marion and do my thing, and the rest will catch up. And so now I'm at Hendersonville, and I'm sure I'll do some other things, not out in Marion again, maybe one more time out there, but if they want me, I'll be glad to go.
And let me ask Alex, in terms of this play, how do you get involved in it?
I saw the call for auditions. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw the call for auditions, and 9 women with a British accent. How could I not audition?
Wait, did they all have to have British accents?
That's the script.
Are you the only one? Or were there any other British folks who auditioned?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So I guess you're actually kind of the model, or you're helping other people, the vocal coach a little bit.
She is a little bit.
Yeah.
But we've given up on that. I mean, it's Marion. It's Marion. So we just let Lady Alexandra, because we have 2 Alexandras in the show, so we call her Lady Alexandra. We just let her go at it full speed. And we have varying degrees. And you know what? I give up on the idea. The audience will accept whoever they are, as long as they're the right character. They don't really have to have perfect Yorkshire accents. It would be too much work to do that.
Alex, for the better for the people who don't know the story or never saw the movie, can you give kind of a synopsis what they'll see when they see the show?
The play was written. This was a real life event, I think in the 80s? No, back in the 80s.
The late 80s, I think.
The late 80s. There's an organisation in Britain, and I think it's also in Canada and New Zealand, called the Women's Institute. And they were been around for about 100 years, different chapters all over the country, and mainly for education, get women together, social. They're known for making jam, cakes, singing a hymn called Jerusalem. So Jam and Jerusalem, you'll hear that a lot in the play. And they would do fundraisers. The one in the play is a calendar with views of churches and views of local bridges. So meanwhile in the play, one of the characters' husband is dying of leukemia, and they want to raise some money to buy a new settee for the family waiting room. And they get an idea for a calendar, and they decide to do an alternative calendar of typical. Can I give the storyline?
Yeah,
away?
a little bit, sure.
A little bit away.
We
Anyway,
won't tell the ending. We'll just tell
it's an alternative calendar of typical WI poses of making jam, knitting, playing the piano, art, painting. But
The only difference is they're naked.
naked.
Or nude, as
Or
Chris
nude.
would say.
Yes, because that's more artistic.
And that sells better than Bridges of Wharfdale.
But you were telling me off the air, though, so if people come see the show, which we're going to encourage them to do, though, they won't see nudity per se.
It's implied nudity. We're very creative in what we do because there's, every county has their rules about what you can and cannot do on the stage and what you can show and can't show. So we've stuck to the county rules and found creative ways to make it appear as if they're nude.
Well, even probably the process, even finding actors to fill the role, you had to get people to audition for it. You call people to come. Did you have a big turnout?
Well, I don't know the area very well. I've only seen one play out there, but it certainly seemed to me that there were a lot of people there at auditions, and it was really kind of hard to weed out who I was going to use and who it was tough. Because there were a large group of very talented middle-aged women that came.
Which is great because, again, as you said, it's not a small cast. You have, how many people in the cast?
Well, there's, I think, 8 or 9 women and 4 men.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah.
so that's pretty big size group.
It is. And it just isn't just numbers. They also have to fit together. As a director, you want to make sure they all get along and, the personalities work. And I think I made the best choice possible. And certainly, as we're progressing through, the outcome is, I think, going to be good. And I think it's because of who came out and who got cast. And Alexandra had to go to Scotland for her father, and so she was gone for almost 2 weeks. Almost 3 weeks. But I still cast her because I knew she could come in and I knew she could do it. And she said to me, I just want to work with these people. And she just met them at auditions. So the fusion, the coming together of the cast was starting at auditions.
Well, you also had a great story you told me off the air about when you were in Scotland that you had a visit to, who was it you visited that you got the calendar?
My father's still alive, but
Right.
I was going through some of my mother's things. Will this show? Shall I show
Yeah,
this?
let me see if we
I
can
found
see
the
it.
original calendar.
Let me just borrow it a second. I'll just show it up close, and I'll get back to you. But it's so cool. Let me just borrow the calendar.
It's 2000, the calendar.
Right.
So.
But I can't believe that Alex found this and said, when ladies of Rylstone and District drop everything for their traditional crafts, jam in Jerusalem will never be the same again. And again, you can see, we won't get people too excited, Mark. We won't show all the individual pictures. But here's the calendar. And that must have been quite something to find the calendar.
Yes, it was, with Mum's writing on, and it was sent by, because my mother had been in the WI for years, and this was sent by another friend, another WI friend to her.
So it was
So-
destiny that she was cast. And who knew? She went to Scotland. We were waiting for her to come back, and she comes back with this most beautiful, precious thing, the actual calendar that the play is all about.
And so they did that as a fundraiser. They
Yes.
sold the calendars. And you would tell me it was successful?
Well, it went global.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
story. And then they wrote the play and then it became a movie. Was that the history of it?
And he later on created a musical because the story's so well known. And so
I think it was a movie first.
movie first, play,
Play,
and
musical.
then musical.
Now, a question, Alex, I'll ask you, I'll ask Mark as well. When there's been a movie made of something, do you have a do you like seeing it beforehand or afterward, or you saw it maybe many years ago? Did you revisit it, the movie?
Yes.
Okay, because some people, I'll be curious from a director's standpoint, some people don't like doing that. They like seeing it fresh. But you had seen the movie, many years ago, and then you saw it again?
I did watch it again before the audition,
For,
yes.
for your role.
Well, for any
Any of the
role
roles.
that Mark felt he wanted to cast me in, yes. Or
And Mark, what's your thinking of that in terms of people seeing something?
I don't have a problem with it. Some people say they're afraid it's going to influence them, but I don't mind you maybe stealing something or a good idea or a good thought, but ultimately you have to make it your own. And if from a research point of view or a reference point of view, you want to watch something, that's perfect. Now you can go on YouTube
Right.
and you could watch
Yeah.
5 or 6 different productions anywhere in the world that they've done this, and you could steal from that if you want to. I don't mind people being familiar with it or watching. When I watch somebody else's work, I usually see the little gems that they create, and then I see the things they do wrong, and I say, well, I don't want to go there with this character. So I'm very critical when I'm watching something. But if an actor wants to do that, I'm probably, maybe half of my cast has, maybe I don't even want to know. If you did it, you did it. It's fine by me.
Because we did that with Hands on a Hard Body at a small role, and it was kind of fun to see that there was a documentary made of the film, and we saw it before the show, but it wasn't a musical version
Yeah.
of it, though.
There's always value in going back and researching, and if you can watch something and it clicks with you or it creates an idea, that's fine. I think the days of not going back and looking at things and saying, oh, I can't, it's going to affect me, I think that's kind of a passé thing. I mean, there's probably some young actors out there that say, I'll never do that. I don't want anybody's work to influence me. Well, if you're watching, Meryl Streep or somebody, maybe it is going to influence you.
Or
But-
Marc Cameron.
or Alexandra.
Right.
Like Helen Mirren does a wonderful job, but the film is just so different than the play that it's almost like you can't really steal much from them.
What's very
But it
exci-
helps, when you can't necessarily get hold of the script and it's up there on Netflix it's instant and it's a reminder of the camaraderie. That's what I got from watching the movie, that
Yes.
sense of the camaraderie.
It's more about the emotions, the dramatic arc, it's not just one person's performance. Oh, I'm going to do what she did.
What's so exciting about this show, and I'm so disappointed, I have to apologize, I'm going to miss it because I'm in this other show, but I like the fact that it hasn't been done locally, and it's fun to see stuff you haven't seen before. And so all the 10 years I've been here, nobody's done this particular show, it's at Foothills Community Theater, which I don't know anything about as well. What kind of theater is that?
Well, I think it's almost 100 seats. It's a black box. It's part of MACA on Main Street. MACA stands for McDowell Artistic. I don't even know what MACA stands for.
Associations in there.
Yeah, there's an association at the end. So it's McDowell Arts Council Association. And it's in the space. So if you're on Main Street, you see the entrance there, and then there's all these crafts by artists and pictures and paintings. And then in the back to the left, there's a black box theater space. And they've been performing there for a long time. They do some of their season, I think, at one of the university or community college campuses theaters as well. And it's a tough space to work in. I think it was an old store at one point, and it's a combination of buildings, and it's really old. And when you have a small budget, you just kind of have to be really creative and do everything.
How long is the run?
6 shows, 2 weekends.
Okay, so that's, boy, talk a little bit about that. It's 6 weekends. Alex, how long has it been in rehearsal? Approximately.
Oh, I have to throw that one back to Mark.
7 or
When
8
do we
weeks.
start?
By the time we open, by the time we get to Tech Week, we will have been talking about it and put it on its feet for at least 6 weeks. But I think auditions were 8 weeks.
It's why I give Alex and all your other actors so much credit. Put in all this time and effort, and for just 6 shows.
And no pay.
Exactly. Well, and that's a lot of work and a lot
And
of effort.
to be honest, because our budget is so low and, we have to stick to that, most people have donated stuff. A lot of actors have bought props and just not asked or given me a receipt and say, can I be reimbursed? I mean, people are doing it because it's community and they want to put on the best show possible.
And the whole theater, right, is driven by volunteers? It's a volunteer organization?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
And talk a little bit about that whole concept, Mark. So you're doing Calendar Girls. Calendar, is that the name of
Calendar
the show?
Girls, yeah.
Girls, we're directing that. And in your spare time, and we should get you a pair of roller skates, I think, because in your spare time, you're going there now. You're starting to prepare now for the show in Hendersonville.
Well, as soon as I started Calendar Girls, I actually cast 3 tall women early before everybody scooped up the 3 women I wanted because, I did it near the holidays and I got the 3 women I wanted prior to, general auditions everywhere else for the season. And I thought, well, let's just start meeting once a week. Let's let them get off book. And I'm hoping that when I get there full time at 4 nights a week at Hendersonville, that they're off book. But we've done a whole lot of script analysis that you just don't normally have the time to do. So I'm glad they took it and ran with it, and they're learning their lines, and they were willing to donate, a night a week to work on it.
You got me interested since you mentioned it, and especially Hendersonville. I may know some of them. Who are the actors?
Character A, the elderly woman, who's not quite sure if she's 91 or 92, is Allison Stinson.
Okay, great.
And she's been around for a while, and she's a lovely actress who came to auditions, and I could just tell she wanted it. Character B is Jessica Ferris, and she was just in the last Albee play there, Virginia Woolf. She was Martha, and then a young actress, I think you know her, Madeline Hull.
Okay. Oh, great
And she
cast.
plays the younger person.
And we'll give a shout out now since you mentioned them. If you know most of the names, talk about some of your cast in the play at the Calendar Girls.
Well, the two leads are Deborah Lonan and Connie Hurst, and they're actually friends, so that works out really
But I
perfect.
think I know Connie too.
Yeah, Connie's been around, and
Right.
she's done some things at ACT. Allison Green, Patty Shore, Alexandra, I'm not sure of her last name, Mongum.
Oh, two
I'm probably
okay.
killing it.
The other Alex.
The other Alex, who's also costuming the show, so kudos to her. Lucy Fresnia, Barbara Creed, Denise Lockhart. So there's two people from Asheville going over the hill with me. Later on, we're going to do a carpool. Justin Connolly and Tom Harrison, and Deborah's husband, an ex-physician, retired physician. His name is Bill Lonan. He plays he plays John, who's the guy who dies from the leukemia and sort of in real life challenged his wife to do this calendar. And so I have a great cast.
And what's disappointing to me is the fact that I'd love to see this because also I don't know most of those folks. You know, I know most of the people in the Asheville area, but a lot of those people I haven't seen. So
Yeah.
it'd be kind of fun to see. But we'll get the next one, which segues into something else that you do, Mark. In addition to acting, directing, all of a sudden now you've become a producer in your spare time because you've actually put on some shows. Remember?
Well, yeah, I'm producing along with the collaboration with Henderson Community Theater is I'm producing. So I pay with my Third Eye Productions. I pay my actors. So
Right.
the actors in Three Tall Women will be paid. The stage manager will be paid.
Which is very, I mean, it's something that's really cool that you do. And you also put on, it was a great production. I saw not too long ago, you put on Red, a couple local theaters too. And that, you not only were acting in it, you were producing it, you were doing the whole thing. Kept you busy?
It did keep me busy.
Yeah. How about that aspect of it? Do you like doing the producing of a show?
Well, you know, some days I do and some days I don't because a Third Eye is just a small group of people, and unfortunately we're losing somebody from the group because Tracy Wallace is moving to Oregon. So that's a big loss for our small little fledgling company. But sometimes in producing you feel like you're the only one and the money's going out and nothing's coming in. But when you're small and starting out, you just need to wrap your head around it's an investment in your business. It's an investment in your art. It's an investment in you.
And you're giving back to the community. Because
Yes.
again, I
Yes.
assume in terms of these productions, nobody's making a lot of money on them, I would assume.
No. And if I break even at Henderson, because it's a 50-50 kind of situation, if I break even, that would be really lovely. But I went out and bought, French provincial furniture because I have a certain standard and I want it to be the way I want it to be. So sometimes you just got to put the money where your mouth is.
And even this show, Alex, I'm thinking you mentioned the costume person. I imagine, there are some costuming challenges in terms of to have the look of the 1980s English or some 1980s.
We're just pulling from people's wardrobes. Alexandra went to thrift shops when she was in London. They have a huge, huge storage area upstairs in the theater, so there's tons of costumes to pick from.
Real quick, if anybody wants to get more information about, first of all, Alex, if they want to find out more about you, is there a way to find out more? Are you on Facebook or?
Yes, I'm on Facebook.
Okay, so you can look for Alex on Facebook.
Excuse me.
Mark, on the two shows coming up, if they want to get information about Calendar Girls or the other show, best bet?
Best bet is to go on the website for Foothills Community Theater. I'm not sure if it's .com or .org, but just type in Foothills Community Theater, Marion, and your choices will come up. Same thing for Henderson. I know Calendar Girls tickets go on sale the 28th, And Hendersonville Community Theater tickets are already on sale for Three Tall Women.
Great. I'd like to thank you both for being my guests the second half hour on the Blaine's World Show.